Okay, I'm going to be changing distributor seal on this 2.7 engine on a two-wheel drive automatic Toyota T100, and it's a 3RZ engine, 2.7, and the 2.7 engines are in Tacomas, I believe, and 4Runners as well. So I found an oil leak on this engine, and I am pretty sure it is coming from the distributor gasket. They call it a distributor gasket seal or O-ring. Basically, it's just an O-ring on the shaft where it bolts in. That's the only part that's sealing the oil from coming out. And of course, I'm sure this is the original O-ring. This, car is over, pretty old. It's 16 years old, so the rubber got old. And I'm pretty sure it's coming from the distributor itself, because there's oil from higher up, and I got my inspection mirror and inspected underneath it, and it seems like it's coming from there. And I'm hoping it's not coming from the head gasket, because there's a lot of oil right there, but I think that's just naturally where the oil went from this higher distributor on the engine, and the fan's just blowing the oil that way. And because there was oil, there's three the sun's in the way here, but there's three screws that hold this distributor cap on. One right here, and one at the way bottom, and the one at the way bottom has oil on it. Those are 8 mil. So what you want to do, at least on this engine, on 2.7 engines, you want to, when you want to mark everything, distributor cap, not so much the distributor cap, where basically that goes. That only fits on one way, and you could remember which way that goes on. You don't need to take off all the wires. This distributor cap is marked for the number of which cylinder they go to. That says this one's the one. They're labeled, and these are the OEM brand spark plug wires, which are really nice. They're marked number 1. It's right here, and they're just all in order on this engine. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're marked. So what you want to do before you get started is to align the timing mark. You can't really see it, but it's on the block there. It said there's numbers, and you want to align the timing mark. There's a notch on the crankshaft pulley to 0, and I got it perfectly marked there. And how you move it is to, let me show you. Go in the car and you get your, I used, let's see, the sun's in the way, so you kind of see it. Okay, that's better. I used a 1/2-inch socket. It's a size 19 mil bolt that's on there, and you turn it clockwise, like you're tightening the bolt. And you turn it. You could turn this whole, so you could turn the engine, and until you get your mark lined up there. So you got to after you move it a little bit, you got to go see where the mark is at. It's set to 0 on the engine block. So do that, and you can move the engine over like this easily, at least for an automatic on a stick. I think you got to put it in neutral. So that's a nice thing about automatic. You can just move it like that with it in park. Okay, let me get back up. So in the manual it says you need to have the distributor in the compression stroke. So this is how you do that, is you take off this distributor cap, and you have it set to 0, and this is number 1 piston for the spark plug, take it off, and the rotor should be pointing to this number 1 spark plug wire. And I'm going to take it off, move this 1 second, and you can see the rotor is pointing down the exact opposite way where it should be pointing, so that's the exhaust stroke. So basically I got to turn it another 180 degrees, or I got to turn that crankshaft pulley again to 0, and that should bring it back up to the number 1 spark plug for the compression stroke. So you just want to make sure you have everything aligned and timed before you start taking things apart. So I'm going to do that, and I'll show you what it should look like. Okay, I got the compression stroke, the compression slash ignition stroke, and how you can tell that. Again, I'm going to take it off, take the cap off, and we know, just got to know which one's number 1 cylinder, spark plug wire right there. And see this video where, okay, let me get a light. You can see the rotor is now facing up towards that number 1 cylinder. So basically that is the ignition stroke. That rotor will send power to number 1 spark plug, and then to number 1 cylinder. So the engine is now top dead center, and the mark down there I have aligned to 0, and you can't really see it, but it's all the way down there. It's on the block, and the timing mark is kind of on the crankshaft pulley is kind of blocked by that belt, so it's hard to see. So on the camera anyway, you just have to move it with your hand to see. And so take your time when you're moving the crankshaft pulley with your ratchet, and because if you go over, you're gonna have to turn it twice, because you can only turn the crankshaft one way. So you want to take your time aligning it up. Otherwise, if you miss it, if you go overshoot it, you're gonna have to go again a couple more times to get it right. Because otherwise you'll go back on the next step after that is the exhaust stroke. So so now that we got it marked, top dead center, the timing on the ignition stroke, combustion, ignition, they call it a whole bunch of things. So now we can go ahead and take this distributor off. So now we can leave this cap off, and you don't need to take off all the wires. Just put it aside like that. And now we need to find the bolts. I think there's two bolts for it. Let me put it on my laser. Let's see. There's one right there. I think there's one at the bottom. You can't see it on camera, but you'll see it. And I'm just guessing it looks like 14 mil. And take that out. And so when you take the distributor out, you go ahead and before we start taking it out, I'm going to unplug the electrical connection right there. It's like a squeeze plug, and you want to take it out gently, and the rotor might move. First, I'm going to make your marks. Like you can mark the center of that, where that center of the rotor goes. Mark it on the rotor body, and then mark the distributor to the engine block. And when you take it out, since the gears are aligned like a helix, the rotor might move. But don't worry about that. Just as long as you pull it out straight and do your best, it should when you put it back in, it should slide back into the same place. I'm just guessing on this. I mean, this is my first time, but from what I saw in other videos and things, we'll see how that goes. Okay, I'm just showing what I did before I removed this. I marked it, the distributor to the engine block with some the paint marker, so that way when you go to put it back on, you know you kind of got it right. And I marked the rotor. I can't get my camera in there. I marked the rotor. I used a black Sharpie to get on the center of about the center of the rotor onto the rotor body here, and then I marked right here on the rotor, the distributor body to the engine block. So that way, it kind of lines up. You get it. It's just extra safety. That way you know you got it right. Okay, I got the distributor off here. Those two bolts that hold it on were actually 12 mil, and they weren't too tight. The book says 14 foot-pounds, which isn't that tight. And there's one at the bottom, and there's one on the side. So there's only two that hold it on. And there's the gear that goes on the gears inside. And right there you see the O-ring that goes around, and so I'm going to change that off. I'll either try to pick it off or cut it off, and this is where it meets the engine block there, and you can see it's pretty oily right there and full of grease and stuff, so my guess is that's where it was leaking. That seal wasn't, that O-ring seal wasn't sealing it anymore. So let me and when you pull it out, you don't want to disturb that too much. It did move as you pull it out, so, but as long as I have all my marks and everything, I shouldn't really mess up the timing. So let me put this down. You want to be careful with this. You don't want to pull when you pull it off. It was kind of have to force it off a little bit, but you don't want to pull off this electrical connection. It's kind of delicate. And let me put it down right there. And I ordered 2 O-rings for it. They were both listed for this car. And I just ordered 2 just to be safe. They were both different part numbers, and this, I could tell already, this one's not going to fit because it's too small. And then I got this off of Amazon, and I can't read it on the camera, but I guess you could. The part number on this one is 999 1488. It's an OES brand. So if you're don't order that part because it's too small. You have to order this bigger one, and it's the same color. It's a brown color as the one off the distributor. They call this one distributor O-ring, and they call this one the distributor seal, which is, tomato. This part number is 999 14 127. So go ahead and get that. This was $5. The cheapest place was Amazon to get it. Also Auto Parts Warehouse has it, but they want, I don't know, $10 in shipping. So, but whatever you have to pay, it's worth it, because it'll stop this oil leak, and you're saving a lot of money doing it yourself. Okay, so I'm going to change that seal, and I'll put it back in. And this is where it bolts on, right there, right there, it goes in the hole. You want to make sure, you don't get any dirt in there, clean it if you do. And see if we get my light. It's leaking oil all the way down here and there. Little oil will come out once you pull it out, so be ready for that. Just not much oil, but maybe have some cardboard on your floor in case it drips out. There it is. I'm pretty sure this is where the oil leak is coming from. And once I reinstall this, I'm gonna get some engine cleaner and clean it up and degrease it, so that way then a little later in the future I'll know it's fixed. If I see some more oil, then I know it's probably coming from a different place. I mean, the valve cover gasket is fine, it's relatively new. I don't see any leaks around up here. The only other thing it might be is the head gasket, which I doubt, but you never know. So it's be good to, once you're done, clean the engine with some engine degreaser and clean it up, and that way in the future you could see if it's fixed for good. Okay, I got the distributor on, and when I was changing the O-ring, I did move the distributor gears. They move pretty easily, so when you go to put it back on, so you don't have to worry about that, as long as you marked it, relative where the rotor should be. When you go to put it on, if it doesn't line up right, you could take it back out and move the gears. You either move the rotor or the gears. And then you try it again and see when you put it back in, where the rotor lands. But on this one, line your marks. That mark basically lines up. When you put it on, you basically want the rotor facing straight up, and it'll mesh with the teeth inside the engine block there. And it should then, once it goes in, then the rotor will move to number 1 cylinder mark right there. And that should be it. And just bolt it back on. The bolts to hold it on, 14 foot-pounds, depending if you want to use a torque wrench on that. And one more thing I forgot to mention, when you take the electrical connection off, at first it's hard, so you have to use a pair of pliers and depress the button right there. What I do, without damaging it, you wrap a rag around it, and with some pliers, don't squeeze down too hard and pull it up, because you don't want to break that. And I'm going to bolt it back on, and I'm going to see if the engine runs right, which it should, and the timing mark down there is still set to 0, so nothing moved in the engine, just a rotor. So everything should be in timed. So I'll bolt it back up and I'll see how it runs. Okay, got the distributor. I got the distributor bolted back on. 14 foot-pounds, 12 mil bolts that hold it on. Got the distributor cap. Those are 8 mil. There's 3. 1 at the bottom, 2 on each side on top. You don't need to get those too tight, because this is plastic. You don't want to break it. And it only goes on one way. So that's good. And one more before I'm going to start it up and make sure everything sounds right. It should be timing still set at 0. Everything looks right up here at the rotor and whatnot. And before you start it, make sure you have everything out. Make sure you take out this socket off the crankshaft pulley. Like that. Everything's out there. And start it up and see how she runs. Okay, the engine is started up, and it seems fine. Sounds just like it used to sound. I think everything is done. Okay, I'm all done here, and the only thing I'm going to do now is just get some engine cleaner and just try to spray off all the old oil on here and just clean it up so that way I could see if there's no oil leaks in the future. And if you have any questions or comments, go ahead, feel free to comment with any questions or whatnot in the comment box below. Be happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability. And that's it on changing distributor seal on a 2.7 liter Toyota engine. Thanks for watching.